Welcome to the What If We Were Taught podcast. I'm your host, Kate. As a midwife and mum, I believe that there is so much more we could be taught to nourish, support, and prepare us for our conception to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and parenting journey. I'll be interviewing experts, thought leaders, and parents from around the world to bring this information to you. And for everything we talk about in today's show, you can find over at thepregnancycollective.com.au/podcast. Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode where I'm joined with Jen Dugard. And who is Jen? Well, she is a global leader in women's health and fitness, founder of MumSafe and creator of the Safe Return to Exercise certification. She has over 19 years of industry experience. She empowers exercise professionals and bigger fitness brands to work safely and effectively with mums through education, advocacy, and evidence-based practice, which we'll be talking all about in this episode. It's so important. She is the board member of Oz Active and works internationally to elevate standards in women's fitness. She's known for her practical insights, professional rigor, and unwavering mission. Jen inspires positive change wherever she speaks, ensuring all mums receive the care they deserve. She's also a fellow podcast with her own incredible podcast episodes, which I will share the link to. And she's also an author of How to Love Your Body as Much as Your Baby. And as per usual on the podcast, whenever I interview an author, I always give one of their books away. So if you want to check that out, you can head over to the What If We Were Taught Instagram page to check out the giveaway that I will be gifting to one lucky person. All right, let's get into today's episode. All right, so welcome to the podcast, Jen.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, Kate.
I'm excited too, and you're no stranger to podcasts, so it's pretty exciting to have a fellow podcaster on the podcast. So thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah. So I've got so many questions for you today, but I wanted to start with, before we talk about pregnancy, postpartum, exercise, and I really want to get a bit more understanding about what MumSafe is. But what led you to create MumSafe initially?
Yeah, so I'm going to try the fast version. MumSafe, the brand, it's actually the brand turned 4 years old yesterday. So kind of a
happy
nice
birthday.
little moment. It's funny, I've let that date pass me by quite a few, like every year up until this year. I was like, oh, I should, recognize that. But the MumSafe brand is built on over 17 years of me working in the pre and postnatal space and 19 years in the fitness industry itself. I started my first brand in 2008, which was called Body Beyond Baby, and I launched that after my son was born. So that was group exercise with on-site childcare in Centennial Park in Sydney, which is where I used to live. And we were one of the first fitness businesses back then that established or saw the requirement, or what I thought was the requirement, to work in collaboration with pelvic health physiotherapists. It wasn't really being done back then at all. And throughout that journey, I, wanted to grow the business to reach more mums, because I could really see that women were not, after my babies, I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I wanted to exercise. So, the Body Beyond Baby journey and then the subsequent Safe Return to Exercise, which is a pre and postnatal certification that I wrote in 2016, was my desire to help reach more mums and elevate the conversation around safe and effective exercise. And then that's what led me ultimately to MumSafe. And MumSafe is a cohort of exercise professionals spread across Australia, New Zealand, and we've got a handful in the UK, which is really exciting, that are all dedicated towards making sure that the way mums are looked after in pregnancy and postpartum is the gold standard. So what led me to it? It's always been the overarching mission to make sure all mums are looked after safely and effectively. And then the way I've gone about doing that has evolved over the years.
Yeah, I love it. When you first contacted me, I got really excited when I started reading about you and what you do, because a pet hate of mine and what I talk about in preparing for the postpartum and everything is this huge, I guess, the expectations or what we see on social media with women bouncing back. And the pressures that women, we could do a whole podcast on this, I'm sure, but the pressures that women feel to get their body back, or to to be in a certain way and to judge themselves and add unnecessary stress to their postpartum. um, but can also be detrimental and and unsafe as well, especially. So I really got excited when I read and saw how much the work you do surrounding women's health physios and incorporating them, because I work very closely with women's health physios. Um, so I thought maybe we could break this down into the pregnancy postpartum exercise and dive a little bit more into the MumSafe program itself. But what do you wish women knew about exercise during pregnancy? We might start there.
It's a very long list, isn't it, Kate? I think
Yeah,
also
I know. Where do you start with this? There is a lot.
I think that I wish they knew about their body, because it's as simple as that. Why are we not educating women in pregnancy about the way that their body works and making sure that they set themselves up for a better birth experience? We can't say it's going to be, trauma-free, pain-free, any of those things, but we can help her to understand her body during that pregnancy period, make sure she's connected with the right people, make sure that she's exercising and moving in the right way, and that she goes into her delivery in with the most amount of education and knowledge so she can make autonomous decisions every single step of the way and have a better outcome. Like it's a complete no-brainer to me about teaching women these things about their body. And if I want to dive deeper, why aren't we teaching women about their pelvic floors? Why aren't we getting them to see pelvic health physiotherapists in pregnancy so they understand not only how to contract their pelvic floor, but also how to release their pelvic floor? Does she have a hypertonic pelvic floor? Does she struggle to let go? What is her perineal length? There's so much that we can do in the preventative stage in pregnancy that we're simply not doing. And I think the other thing is there's still a huge amount of fear around exercise in pregnancy, and the research is really clear. It's more detrimental to not exercise in pregnancy at all than it is to even commence exercising in pregnancy.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly there. Absolutely, especially when we're talking about women's health physios. And yeah, there's a lot of not education so much. There's a lot of information surrounding pelvic floor and doing your Kegel exercises and things like that. And very little people actually talk about the importance of actually relaxing our pelvic floor. And definitely the benefits of seeing a women's health physio. I think we both are the same there. If I could have my way, we'd have continuity of care with the midwife, we'd have women's health physios, we'd have lactation consults, all as our standard of care. I'm so going to transgress and jump back and forth with MumSafe because you've made me think of so many questions that I wanted to ask. Coming back to like the MumSafe model, because maybe we might talk about that, then go into pregnancy, because this model isn't just for the postpartum, it's also for the pregnancy, to make sure that providers are actually educating people in pregnancy to a standard that ensures that they have the right information. So what is MumSafe? How does that sort of work with the practitioners that are doing MumSafe and then delivering that education?
Yeah, so all MumSafe trainers have to have a baseline, base layer or base qualification. So in the fitness industry, people may or may not know that we're a very unregulated industry. I sit on the board of AusActive, which is a fitness industry, governing body, but there's no compulsory thing that says you must be registered, you must continue your education, you must do X, Y, and Z. So there's the people that are aligning themselves with that quality and that standard of care. And then there's those that maybe don't so much. MumSafe really makes sure that the exercise professionals that call themselves MumSafe trainers meet that quality. So the first one is that they hold a pre and post-natal certification that is accredited with AusActive. And it has to be, for us, it has to be over a certain amount of CPDs and a certain amount of hours course, because again, there's a few, short 2 or 3 hour courses that we can tick a box. Trainers like to think that they know everything, but they don't. We also, all of our MumSafe trainers have to prove, so they get a letter from their pelvic health physiotherapist to prove that they're not only referring to them, but there's a two-way conversation from trainer to mum to physio back to, whether it comes back to the mum and the trainer, but ideally there's that the referral pathway and then a report coming back to the trainer. So the trainer can actually modify the exercise that client is doing based on physiotherapy findings and recommendations.
Yeah, that's
MumSafe
fantastic.
it makes such a big difference. And even that, making sure that they get the information back, because it's one thing to refer your clients to a pelvic health physio. It's another thing to then get secondhand information off a mum who's either pregnant, overwhelmed, or postpartum overwhelmed and tired, to then be able to create the right exercise program. So the communication that we want is from physio to trainer, and we help them to set up those communication pathways. Then they're also registered with AusActive or a similar governing body in their country. And then we also support their ongoing education, working with women and mums, because we know one base level pre and postnatal certification is great for that moment in time. But then what happens, when she goes into perimenopause or menopause? What happens if she has a hysterectomy? What happens if she's got endometriosis? And we make sure that, all of our MumSafe trainers are given this well-rounded, again, CPD certified education so that they can support the whole woman throughout pregnancy, postpartum, and then the rest of her life cycle as well.
Yeah, that is incredible. I love that it's actually true collaborative care at work as well. It's not just simply referring to the physio, that it's going back and forth to ultimately deliver true collaborative care. That is amazing. In terms of certification, is it just that how often do they have to certify? So obviously someone could become a MumSafe trainer, and then how valid is that for? How often do they need to recertify to make sure they're up to date with current guidelines and knowledge?
Yeah, so the Safe Return to Exercise, or we have a number of pre and postnatal certifications that we value as being that base level of certification that has to have been done in the last 3 years for them to even become a MumSafe trainer in the first place. They then, once they are a MumSafe trainer, they can reset our Safe Return to Exercise certification as many times as they like. We don't charge them for that. So every time there's an update, they can get the manual, they can come and sit on a live course. But then they're doing at least 10 CPDs of education every year. So we've got up to level 4 at the moment. So they're not necessarily recertifying in the pre and postnatal, but they're building on that knowledge every single step of the way. And one of the things that we do is we bring in pelvic health physios every year to do a research update. And that becomes part of our, CPD certification to make sure that they're building on the knowledge rather than just repeating the same year and the same things over and over again.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds almost like the certification to become a midwife. You become a midwife, and then we have to have certain CPD expectations that we meet every year and pass our regulatory board to make sure that we're required that, and that we're staying up to date with clinical guidelines and knowledge. And ultimately, I
was just going to say, problem with the fitness industry is that's not compulsory. To be a MumSafe trainer, we make it compulsory, but the fitness industry itself don't make that ongoing CPD accreditation or education compulsory.
Yeah, and I really think that's something really important to flag, because especially in pregnancy and postpartum, having those credentials and seeing someone that's qualified to be a safe teacher is really important. I'd like to talk more about the postpartum. Before we do that, can we talk a bit more in pregnancy? What do you wish that people were educated more when it comes to pelvic floor? You touched on it a little bit there in terms of making sure that we have that understanding of how to do our pelvic floor exercise correctly, but also releasing. What other education do you think that you're wishing that women should be receiving in pregnancy?
Understanding their transverse abdominis would be another great idea. So obviously we've got pelvic floor, we've got transverse abdominis, which for anyone listening is the innermost layer of abdominal muscles. So we've got 4 layers of abdominal muscles. We've got rectus abdominis sitting on the outside, external obliques, internal obliques, and then transverse abdominis wraps all the way around from the back to the front. And in our, when we're growing a baby, all of those muscles stretch and stretch and stretch. And then for some women, or, research tells us 100% of women will end up with a diastasis recti, or an abdominal separation, which is the stretching and thinning of the linea alba between the rectors. Now, traditionally in the fitness industry, we've been taught to do sit-ups and twisting movements to train our core. And there's so many people that don't understand to how to recruit from what we call from the inside out. So that beautiful pelvic floor contraction, then drawing transverse abdominis in and back, or whatever cue you want to use. So I, really would love pregnant women, postpartum women to understand how to properly recruit their core from the inside out, rather than just doing these, there's nothing wrong with the word bracing if you're bracing from the inside out, but the word brace and tense and whatever in the fitness industry generally is hold your stomach muscles on as hard as you can, which in our pregnant mums is not helpful because it's potentially putting pressure down through her pelvic floor and onto her linea alba. And it's not particularly helpful anyway for anyone because it's not creating that real stability. So if we can teach her how to activate transverse abdominis in pregnancy, it's going to not only support her body through pregnancy, where we've got a lot more pressure on the pelvic floor, pressure on the pelvis, we're going to keep, that structure a lot more stable. And then it's going to set her up, again, postpartum to be able to refind or, rebuild those muscles again.
Yeah, so great to hear all of that, especially that I think even from the trainer's perspective, so they have that understanding, so they're educating in a way that is safe, and also they can make adjustments when needed for people. In pregnancy for MumSafe trainers, is it a requirement that they refer all women to a physio, or is it that they let them know about a physio to work with?
It is a requirement that they do their best. Obviously, at the end of the day, we can't force anyone to go. But there is a line in our, we have a code of conduct and an agreement where they, highly recommend that every woman sees a pelvic health physiotherapist. So it's there, and it is a requirement that they refer. But again, if she chooses ultimately not to go. Having said that, the ones that choose not to go usually just go later. Eventually they'll go. It just takes a little bit more time, especially, if we're thinking about what we want women to understand is the things that are happening to her body in pregnancy and postpartum are not necessarily symptomatic. So, pelvic floor abdominal wall, not like knee pain, not like pelvis pain, not like wrist pain, which are the other three, what we call contraindications that a lot of women experience in pregnancy and postpartum. If her knee hurts, she's going to tell her trainer. If she's got wrist pain, she's going to want to stop doing something. Same with pelvic pain. But if women start to understand that their pelvic floor can be weakening over time and it's non-symptomatic, and the same with their abdominal wall, then potentially they're more open to the education, seeing a pelvic health physio, avoiding certain exercises, doing other exercises, even if they don't think that it's happening to them.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think actually and I think once you lead, if you have the proper educator that talks to women about the benefits of women's health physios and what they're doing and assessing and the reasons behind it, most women will see women's health physio. I might talk a little bit about it now because I am so passionate about this and I teach it in week 2 of my classes. And the reason I really encourage women to see a physio in pregnancy, which sounds very similar, is because there is so much that we can do from an individual model rather than a one size fits all in terms of pelvic floor. So when we've got a women's health physio that's assessing a woman, and they don't have to always do an internal exam, but often, that is obviously, I'd say, the gold standard, but absolutely they can assess a woman's health pelvic floor without using internal exams. But what we're gaining from that information is, first, we're getting a baseline as to what the pelvic floor looks like, strengths and weaknesses, and specific exercises that we could do to improve. They can also get an idea of if one side is more tight than the other. They can get an idea of the perineum, the gap between the perineum in terms of birthing. And they work really closely with talking about, in terms of birth prep and birthing, how to relax those muscles. And most women that I have, from my experience working with women's health physios, many women do not actually understand how to fully relax their pelvic floor or to tighten it correctly. So to have that actual feedback on how to do it correctly gives them that understanding of actually how to work with those muscles for strengthening, but also to relax. And that's what we really, I coming from the birthing point of view, we want to be able to relax those muscles and open everything up. But it also gives us that baseline. I'm very passionate about this because I have a prolapse. So talking about the postpartum, if you've seen that same physio in pregnancy and then you're seeing them postpartum, we've already got that baseline, and there's a window of opportunity that we can do so much to improve the pelvic floor postpartum. So yeah, I love that. I just think it would actually change. I remember speaking to a quite renowned gynecologist here on the Gold Coast, and she was saying that if she could change one health initiative, for it would be to implement women's health physios in pregnancy, because it would have a massive impact on pelvic floor trauma that we are seeing. So yeah, really, really cool. In terms of like the postpartum, so what sort of pressure do you think is put on mums in the postpartum? I mean, I could talk a lot about this. And what
So
does
much
she need
pressure.
to know, I guess, about returning to exercise in
Yeah.
sort of a safe way? Like what feels okay and how do we do that safely?
Yeah, I think, you kind of touched on this at the beginning, Kate, around, what pressure is she feeling? Like, not only is she, if she's a first-time mum learning to be a mum, not only is she sleep deprived, not only is she figuring out, her body in its new kind of form, but she's bombarded with messages of, bouncing back and getting your pre-baby body back and all that kind of thing. And I think, if a mum walks into a gym or exercise environment and the person on reception or the exercise professional, whoever it is, makes the assumption that she is there to lose weight or get her body back, she should run. Because the fitness industry has done such a good job of making fitness or, you know, what we should look like be a certain thing, and expecting mums, postpartum mums, to bounce back and want to get their pre-baby bodies back. She needs to be in an environment from the get-go that is encouraging her to move for her mental health, that is encouraging her to move from a strength training perspective, and that is also giving her permission to ease back into exercise at a pace that is right for her
Mm.
and not with the sole goal of losing weight. So, you know, really choose your exercise environment wisely. I think the other thing to, flag when she's walking into an exercise environment is, what are they asking you? So you're going to do some kind of, I hope, pre-exercise screening. If you don't do one, another reason to say thank you very much. This is not the right place for me. But what are they asking you in those screenings? Because the typical pre-exercise screening has 3 questions for postpartum. It says, have you had a baby in the last 12 months? Now, we already know that postpartum is not a 12-month time frame,
Mm.
or we may not know, but 12 months is from, postpartum is from the day she's had a baby for the rest of her life. So we know that that
Thank
question
you.
is useless.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
what if her baby's 18 months? Yep.
Yep.
So so that's the first question we ask. Then we ask the question, have you had your 6-week checkup? And again, the fitness industry has done a really good job of taking this 6-week checkup marker and making it something that gives her permission to do whatever exercise that she wants to do. We need to understand that the 6-week checkup is the end of her postpartum medical care, assuming that everything is okay. That is the marker that it is. And it's really got nothing to do with the way or state that her body is from a exercise and movement perspective.
Mm.
So if that, and then the third question that we ask is, do you feel okay? I've never met a postpartum woman that knows what feeling okay actually is. And if she does, she's like, yeah, I feel fine, maybe because she's not in pain or she's not hurting. But we've already discussed that, pelvic floor, abdominal wall. And then even if she is symptomatic with leaking and things like that, it's not hurting. So she can ignore it and she can go back to the exercise she was doing beforehand because she's 18 months postpartum or she's had a 6-week checkup. So I would really love women to understand that the fitness industry is not equal, and the way you're walking into may or may not, even if they are advertising to mums, they may not have the right qualifications. I normally, there was a Facebook post came up. It was a Gold Coast gym. Normally I let things pass me by because they trigger me all the time. But this post said, we're running 9:30 mums and bubs sessions. We're looking for 10 mums, blah, 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 blah. And I just couldn't help myself. And I commented underneath and said, oh, can you just tell me what your pre and postnatal what your certifications are?
Fairly sure might have got one of these messages.
Yeah. And they said, oh no, you must have misunderstood. We're not running postpartum classes. We're running mums and bubs classes. And I was like, okay. And I just wrote some like, okay, so, you know, bit of a smart ass post, but without being degrading.
Mm.
Yeah, women just need to know that trainers are not all the same. They need to ask questions of
So
their
yeah, I have so many comments that I could make about that. Like, so she's a mum and bub, but she's not postpartum.
Well, because maybe she's not, I don't know, 6 weeks, or maybe, I don't know.
Well, see, even when you were saying the base back to those three questions that they asked, have you had your 6 week checkup? Well, like, what do they take anything further than that? Because
Nope.
what information is that if you're not then receiving what you said before with like the feedback from the whoever's doing that 6 week check? That
Yeah.
means nothing if they could say, yes, they've had the 6 week check, but that 6 week check showed that there was massive dysfunction and
But would the 6 week check have shown that anyway? Because they're not doing that in those checkups.
yeah, well, that's very true too. Who did the 6 week checkup? What is the yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not as if it's a 6 week checkup just with a GP, it's not going to be a women's health physio checkup.
No.
So what would then a MumSafe program look like? So in terms of screening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would start with, you know, even things like how old is your, oh, are you pregnant? Are you postpartum is the first question that we're going to ask. Then we're going to
That's a good
ask,
start.
yeah. Then we're going to ask how many pregnancies she's had, not just how many babies she's had, because women have got, you know, and from a very, I guess, trauma-informed perspective of, you know, different women have different experiences. So, you know, we want to ask the questions, we want to gather the information, but we don't want to, we try and be very careful of language that we use, but respecting the fact that she might have had a stillborn baby, she might have had a miscarriage, and, you know, the right exercise professionals want to know that information. We also want to know.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt because I just want to say thank you for asking that question, because there's so many women. I mean, I just did a whole podcast on early pregnancy loss, and you know, for women that have lost a pregnancy at any stage, they've still gone through all the hormone changes, they've still gone through the body changes, they might have stepped out of their normal exercise regime for X amount of time due to morning sickness or whatever. So yeah, just because they haven't, you know, had a baby now at full term does not mean that they, so I just think I'm really glad that you asked that question and frame it in that way. So thank you.
Thank you for recognizing. I appreciate it.
No, it's really big.
We do have some trainers that will put things on their website that say there are times that you can train with us when there are not mums with young babies in the gym. We understand that if you've experienced loss, you need a postpartum trainer, but you may or may not want to be in this environment. So please get in contact.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Other questions that we ask is we're also not interested only in the most recent birth. So yes, we ask for the birth date of the baby, but we want to know, then we want to ask questions like, you know, what kind of delivery or what kind of birth did you have? We want to know how many births, and we go into the questions with all the births, because she may have had a relatively straightforward, and I say those words with hesitancy when it comes to birth, but, you know, something that's not had tearing or pushing for a long time or any kind of trauma, but she might have experienced that in the birth that she had prior to this one. And if we only ask about the most recent, then we're missing a whole history of information that is really important. And we're also aware that our trainers are often the very first person in an exercise environment that's ever asked those questions. So if she's been training beforehand and she has had that experience, there could be a whole host of exercise that have put her in a potentially worse off position the second time than she was beforehand. So we ask those questions. Then we ask about, you know, if she had a vaginal delivery, how long was she pushing for? Did she have any tearing? What degree of tearing? Has she been looked after? Has she seen a pelvic health physio? If she's had a C-section, was she pushing beforehand? Was it an emergency? Was it planned? Like all of the questions that we kind of look at to determine where her body is right now and what we need to do moving forward. We want to find out if she had pelvic pain during pregnancy. Has the pelvic pain gone away or has it continued? Because we know that I think the statistics 45% in pregnancy and 25% postpartum. So there's that 20% of women that pelvic pain will go away, but it may come back again if we do the wrong exercise. If it is pelvic pain, what type of pelvic pain? Because if it's sciatic pain, we want to avoid hip extension. We also want to avoid single leg exercises, at least until she's been working with a pelvic health physio for a while. So we're asking, you know, carpal tunnel syndrome, wrist pain, We're also going through a physical check with her. So we will check for abdominal separation. We won't diagnose because it's not within our scope of practice to diagnose, but we can check her at the linea alba. We can look at the width, but we can more importantly, we can look at the depth. We can then teach her externally a pelvic floor TA contraction, giving her the education that there's only so much that we as trainers can do through touch and feel. And this is why we want you to see a pelvic health physio. But when she does a transverse abdominis activation, is that linea alba now more firm, so that therefore we know that with that pre-activation before exercise, she has a better transfer of load, and that is a good thing for her to be thinking about, at least in the initial stages. Even simple things, Kate, like so many people are taught to breathe in and activate their pelvic floor, and they don't realize that, the body, as you breathe out, is when, you're supposed to activate pelvic floor, but they're breath holding and they're bearing down and they're doing all these things. So there's all the verbal things, and then there's all the physical things that a trainer will go through with them.
Yeah, so good. So if someone was attending a gym or they've got a personal trainer or something, how do they ensure that that place is MumSafe?
Well, if they've got a MumSafe logo, they're MumSafe. If they don't, they are not. At a base level, I'd be, whether they're a MumSafe facility or trainer or not, I'd be asking them what their pre and postnatal certifications are. How long did it take to complete them? So again, just going back to like 2 or 3 hour courses, it's a great overview, but they're designed to tell us what we don't know, not what we do know or what we could know. Are they partnered with a pelvic health physio? Is that part of the initial pre-screening? Do they go through a pre-screening process with you? Yeah, it's really is at the moment on the woman to ask the questions to make sure that she's in the right environment. And then even thinking about, are you allowed it to come and do this class without any screening? There's gyms out there that, even pitch to mums, and they'll encourage you to come and do a trial session, and then they'll do the pre-screening after the trial once they know that you're over the line and you're paying them.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you do that? Like how do you then go, okay, we've welcomed you into this class, we've given you all these exercises to do, now you've signed up, and then then we're going to do a pre-screening and an assessment to see where you're at, and then in your next class we're going to tell you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z, but we didn't ask you not to do that in the first place.
I feel like that is done a lot.
It is done a lot. Like, that's not okay. Like, we at least need, even if there's not an assessment, we at least need a pre-screening that's given to the trainer at the start of the session, so that and a good trainer that's been around for a while or has some experience can go through that relatively quickly if they need to. It's not the ideal scenario, but, I'm flagging birth experience. I'm flagging any pain. I'm flagging, do you have any pelvic floor weakness or symptoms or signs or symptoms of pelvic floor weakness or prolapse or anything like that? And then I'm kind of saying things to you like, this is your first session. I'm going to go hands-on while other people, and I'm going to teach you pelvic floor TA while we're warming everyone else up. And the awareness is that I'm getting to know you, you're getting to know me. We're going to err on the side of caution. We're going to book you in to see a pelvic health physio. And then when we've got the full information about where you are right now, we're going to create a plan. Like, you can move with us today, but we're not going to push you just because we think a good workout has to be something in your brain. A good workout in this environment is me giving you education so that you can understand that we've got your best interests at heart, and then you can start to self-advocate and decide what's best for you. But there's so much that women don't know at the moment. We can't just throw them into group fitness classes and not ask the right questions.
Yeah, I really like that you just walked through all of that, because in my mind I was wondering what it actually looked like for the woman that was walking into the setting. And yeah, that was perfect, because to then understand how they can actually form that and collaborate with the physio and then come back. I mean, it's such individualized care. It sounds like such a gold standard. What about in terms of, is one of the other screening things that you ask about lactating?
We do ask about breastfeeding. We ask about breastfeeding more out of comfort and things like that. Obviously, I mean, you can correct me. You are the expert in this area, but all the research tells us that breastfeeding is not affected by exercise. However, the caveat being, if she's gone to you know, she's rushed around in the morning. Maybe she's got a toddler to drop off. She's forgotten to have breakfast. Then she's arrived at your class. Maybe her breast milk may, and it happened to me when I started training, may decrease because of the extra energy output. So, you know, the training on its own is not necessarily causing any decrease. And I can see you smiling, so I'm not sure if I'm like on the right track or not.
No, you're fine.
But we want to, make sure that if she is breastfeeding, that she is letting us know if she's got a decreased milk supply. Having said that, then that would be taught to a midwife, taught to a nutritionist. We can check in and make sure that you are eating enough. We can ask you if you had breakfast, but it's not a, zone of genius, I guess.
The reason I ask it is because, and I think a lot of women aren't aware of this, that our actual nutrient requirements, our protein requirements, everything that we require in pregnancy, like our glycine, our protein, our choline, like everything, if we're a breastfeeding mum, is higher postpartum breastfeeding than it was at any other stage in pregnancy. So our intake of energy, of protein and good quality nutrients needs to be better than it was even in pregnancy. Like everything goes up. So then if we're exercising and we're expending all this energy, but we're not educated and how many mums are surviving on toast and everything?
Oh, totally.
Like
and they're definitely not eating better postpartum than they were in pregnancy.
And I think a big part of that comes back to education in pregnancy. Like if we understand first off, the nutrients, I mean, this is another area of mine that I'm passionate with, like how much, when we first become pregnant, we're told, oh, you just don't eat soft cheeses, basically, when we could empower women, like this is all of the requirements that we're needing in pregnancy to nourish your baby and you at these milestones and everything like that. If we had that understanding in pregnancy, we'd already have that understanding leading into the postpartum, how we can better fuel ourselves. But if we had that understanding as well, we'd be probably more inclined to look after ourselves than if we didn't have it. Because when most women don't know about that with lactating, and that I think there's this kind of misconception that we've had the baby and like that's it, like not realizing that for that first 6 months, if we're exclusively breastfed, like you are still fully growing that baby. And you're then recovering from being pregnant, birthing, and still feeding that baby. So nutrition plays such an important role. And when I think of exercise and everything, I think, well, let's also make sure these women are properly getting the right education surrounding how to restore. So that's why I asked.
Agreed. We have some nutrition modules inside MumSafe, but my brain has just gone, how can we do that better? Because our trainers, there's a few of them that are nutritionists. So it's how do we partner with, and many of them do partner with nutritionists, or at least have a checklist from a credible nutritionist that can be given to exercising mums. That would be a really good resource that we can introduce. Yeah.
Have you looked at the work of Lily Nichols?
No, but I will write.
Feel like I should be getting paid for Lily Nichols. Everyone that follows this podcast know that I have no endorsing whatever it's called here, because I feel like I drop her name on every single podcast.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, real food for pregnancy, real food for fertility, real food for gestational diabetes. She's a dietitian that examines all of the research surrounding what nutrients our body is requiring in pregnancy. So that's where I was pulling those information like choline, glycine, protein, omegas, vitamin A even, all of that. She looks at all the research and breaks it down into real food, what we're needing. Like she would be excellent to get you. Yeah, probably the most up-to-date and qualified person that I've been aware of in the nutrition in pregnancy and postpartum space.
Awesome. So, thank you.
That's okay. Lily should thank me.
Has Lily been on the podcast?
She has been on the podcast. Yes, she has been on the podcast. So no, thank you, Lily, for your work that you do. Now I've totally thrown where I was going to go with this. Okay, so we've kind of talked about like what I feel like we've got a good understanding of what MumSafe is and what we're looking for in the postpartum and why this is so important, and in pregnancy and exercise. If we talk it more, was there anything you want to add to that I haven't added already? Because I want to talk more about now how we can start making public health changes and system changes and things like that.
Yeah, I think one thing to highlight, and the further along I get in my, what is the idealistic outcome versus what is the realistic outcome, is then there has to be an awareness. We've just said to women, don't exercise with this person, don't do this with this person, make sure that you have the right care. And whilst I wholeheartedly believe that that is what the ideal scenario is, the realistic, or the situation that we're in at the moment is not enough Australians are moving as much as they should be. And they're not meeting the regular exercise guidelines. And that means that not enough women, pregnant women, postpartum women, are also sitting within that. So, yes, we're talking about potential, damage to pelvic floor, abdominal wall, all that kind of thing. Wouldn't want women to be scared to move their bodies, because on the flip side, a lot of the research is saying you can actually work harder than we thought that you could safely and effectively in pregnancy. So yeah, from a cardiovascular perspective, from a baby perspective, even working up to that 9 out of 10 is not having any detrimental effects on the unborn baby, on her cardiovascular system. It's more making sure that her structural system, so her pelvic floor, abdominal wall, pelvis, is coping with the load of exercise that she's doing. But I would highly encourage all pregnant women, all postpartum women, to know that exercise in general is safe. We just want to be consciously choosing the type of exercise that we're doing and who we're doing it with. But getting out for a walk, doing some bodyweight squats in your living room, that kind of movement is not going to be detrimental at all. And I want women to feel empowered to move and explore forward, rather than like, oh my goodness, I listened to this conversation, exercise is bad if I do it wrong. Exercise done in whatever way is probably going to be more beneficial than no exercise at all.
Yeah, really awesome that you flagged that. I couldn't agree more. And even coming back to what you mentioned before about, the narrative around getting back into our pre-bodies. Yeah, the work you're doing is already in this space, but it would be just so nice if we work towards changing that narrative, that it's not, let's lose weight. It's more, let's feel good, let's empower, let's get our strength up, let's, be fit and healthy. I don't know where I was going with that. Just changing that narrative that women are having. But yeah, and the exercise in pregnancy, I think, is a really good one that you touched on as well, because so many women are afraid to sort of do exercise in pregnancy. They don't realize that there's so much research now to show the benefits of exercise, not just for ourselves, but for actually our babies. As they grow up into children, adolescent, and adulthood, when their mothers have been fit and healthy in pregnancy. There's some pretty good research out there. If you could redesign the care pathway, where would exercise professionals sit alongside midwives and physios?
We would be part of both the preventative and, I question using the word rehabilitative, because pregnancy is not an injury, but there is a period of recovery that she will go through. So exercise professionals would be a pillar of support for all pregnant and postpartum women.
I actually don't have a problem with the word rehab in a way, because I think it more addresses the fact and acknowledges that, I just think we put too much pressure on women to, you've just had a baby, get back into it. When if we acknowledge more that you've had 10 months, it's not 9 months, it's like 10 months of holding a baby and then birthing, it takes so long. I think women's health physios say it takes actually up to 12 months to fully restore our pelvic floor, up to 6 months, 12 months. It is, in my mind, like, if we focus more on that, we would be looking at it more from a perspective of how we can do it safely and how we can, do it more in a safe manner, similar to rehab. Like yes, it's not an injury. You haven't done something wrong, or like coming from that perspective, but it is something that we've had massive body changes, and how can we ensure that we're doing it correctly and in the best way moving forward? Like, our bodies have changed. So I guess that would go along with policy change. Are there things in the industry that you are doing to work towards policy changes in this area?
Yeah, I think, this conversation is fitness industry related, but it's whole government related. So at the moment, like we've got this 700, and I can't remember the exact, I knew it, over $700 million has gone into women's health, and not 1 cent has gone into preventative or postpartum care. There's been money gone to two maternity units to upgrade them in New South Wales, but nothing at all has gone to support, better birthing or better recovery for pregnant and postpartum women. And it's funny, like I get really
That really
angry.
pisses me off.
I get angry, and then I also have to catch myself and go, and we've taken a really big step in the right direction, having perimenopause care, menopause care, endometriosis clinics, all of those things. So you can never say that that is not valid or important, because it 100% is. And women are living, women with undiagnosed endometriosis for years and years and years, and that has to change. However, we've got, you know, one of the line items in the budget says better education for GPs around perimenopause and menopause. Why aren't we doing better education for GPs around, in pregnancy and 6-week checkups? We could be doing much better 6-week checkups than we are doing. We could be doing, in our antenatal classes, there's not one class on your actual body. It's on how to breastfeed. It's on what pain relief options are, maybe Kate, different in your world. But
I was about to say, I teach so much in my antenatal classes.
But even not like, we're not teaching her about her pelvic floor. Yes, you are like, but
yes,
we're not in the big world. Every woman, there's not an equitable landscape where she's being taught that her pelvic floor is really fucking important. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear. Really important in the birth process. And, even questions or educating, like if she has a tight pelvic floor, does she want to spend the next 6 months, if we let's say we find out at 24 weeks she's got a hypertonic or tight pelvic floor, she could then work with a pelvic health physio for the following 20 weeks to see if she can learn to release that pelvic floor. She could then get to 38 weeks and have a very educated conversation with her physio, and then bringing in her midwife or her obstetrician to say, this woman has worked for the last 20 weeks and still has a tight pelvic floor. So we're worried about the birth outcome. She then has the option, as a fully educated grown woman, to choose a C-section if that aligns with what she would like to do, or to choose to still have a vaginal delivery, knowing that the outcome from that vaginal delivery may be, she may end up with more tearing, she may end up with an assisted delivery. She could then choose where she wants to birth based on the fact that, or not the fact, the potential for the birth outcome. And she can make educated choices. And I've had clients that have gone down that road, have known they have had a hypertonic pelvic floor, have experienced birth trauma, assisted delivery, whether it's forceps or ventouse, and have had a longer road of recovery afterwards. But she made that choice because it was right for her. And at no point did she ever say, I wish somebody had told me, or why did nobody tell me that this could happen to me based on my body? And I've sat in rooms with many other women that have, they start to put the pieces together when they learn the signs and symptoms of hypertonic pelvic floors and, painful sex, recurring UTIs like glute pain, lower back pain, whatever it may be. And they're, 3 years down the track with a prolapse and potentially still a hypertonic pelvic floor. And they're putting the pieces together. Like, these are trainers in my courses, and they're saying, why is nobody telling anyone this? Yeah. So I go back to the policy. And then if we look further along the road, those women who are going into perimenopause and menopause with already pelvic floor stuff going on, as their hormones change, as they lose estrogen, those tissues become, weaker again, and they're more potential, they're potentially going to have prolapse or recurring prolapse symptoms in perimenopause or menopause. So I really do think with the current budget and the way that it's being distributed, we're trying to pull women out of the river in their late 40s and 50s and beyond, when we could have stopped. It's 77% of women in Australia will become a mother. 77% of those 100% that will go through menopause could be in a better position when we get there, which would cost the government less because we potentially would need less, care from a pelvic floor or, other perspective down the track. It doesn't make sense.
I agree, and I think from I mean, everyone's heard me say this as well, but from a policy perspective, I think at the bare minimum, every woman should have a 6-week women's health physio check. Should just be standard of care. It should be
Yep.
standard of care that in the hospital setting, we're getting educated about that. It's not versus if you're having it in private or public, that I think currently the current model is in, well, at least in the public sector, it's if you've had an instrumental birth or a cesarean, you more fit into the guidelines of being seen by women's health physio. But if you haven't had any of those, then you don't. In the private sector, often women will more likely be seen by women's health physio, but they're not necessarily seen. But they're still not doing this. They're just educating them about do your pelvic floor exercises, but they're not talking about this 6-week check that needs to be done. But I would go further than that, in that, like, that would be the first step in policy, and then the second step would be including it in antenatal education, which I do. So I'd like to just
there's many beautiful, amazing practitioners out there that are doing it off their own back. It's just
I actually, as of next year, I'll be incorporating into my classes a women's health physio to talk about pelvic floor in Unit 2, which I'd already done myself, but to actually have a women's health physio there is going to be a pretty exciting thing that I wasn't going to announce just yet, but I have now let that slip. There's so much that could be done more in all of this space. I sound like a broken record with this as well, just in the pregnancy space. I feel the same with IBCLCs. Like, breastfeeding is a massive, we know how important it is, and yet our breastfeeding rate of success at 12 weeks is pretty dismal. Yet we know our World Health Organization recommends that we should exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. So what is happening to these women that they can no longer continue that journey? And how could we fix that or improve that? And one of the things would be incorporating proper education antenatally and then postpartum with an IBCLC, I think, anyway. Oh, is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation around, I guess, from pregnancy, birth, postpartum, any further information that we haven't? I know that we could do several podcasts on this, but that we haven't touched on.
There is one thing that came up, and when I heard you say before around women are visited by a pelvic health physio, certain women are visited by a pelvic health physio in like early postpartum. It's very hard for women to take in that information at that 1 to 2 day mark anyway. And also the research tells us that 60% of women, when they think that they're activating their pelvic floor, and they're doing it from either verbal instruction or from reading some kind of literature or instruction, is that they think that they're drawing their pelvic floor up, they're actually bearing down.
Yeah.
So if women even just understood that, it might encourage more people to go and see a pelvic health physio, because you can get that brain muscle connection wrong, and you can think that when you're breastfeeding your child or you're doing your pelvic floor contractions, you're drawing up, but you're actually pushing down. And if we play that out a little bit more, and you then decide to go into an exercise environment, and then you work with an exercise professional that they may ask you about your pelvic floor, and you may say, yeah, I've been doing my pelvic floor exercises, but they've not checked, they've not done any kind of hands-on, they've not referred you to a pelvic health physio. So there's this assumption that you've been doing them and you've been doing them correctly. You may also be very fit. You may have a really good exercise history. You may have a good foundation. So you get moved quite quickly into exercises that create more intra-abdominal pressure. Now, your personal trainer, even if they are talking about pelvic floor, are going to get you be at the bottom of a squat. They'll use the word they'll say something like brace, activate pelvic floor, I don't know, tense, like whatever it is. And instead of drawing your pelvic floor up, you could be pushing out. And now you're doing it under load with a 40-kilo barbell or whatever it is on your back. So, and then we go over time, it's fine once or twice, but over time, that's when we could end up with, exercise-induced prolapse or things like that over time. So sometimes I think, and we're not here to scare anyone, and we're not here to say this is going to happen to you, but women do well when they've got knowledge. I've never really seen any woman that's been given more information has kind of run to the hills, like not knowing what to do. It's like, how do I dig deeper? How do I find out what's right for me? And ultimately she becomes more empowered because she's got more education about her body, and then she can make conscious decisions over what's right or wrong. And she may choose, she could be leaking and choose to continue exercising. No, I'm not saying that I agree with that, but if she's under the guidance of a pelvic health physio and she's choosing what's right for her in an exercise environment, and she understands the potential consequences, well, she has body autonomy and she gets to
she's
choose
made an
what she
informed
wants to do.
choice.
Absolutely.
No, 100%. I mean, this is what I was sort of leading to before when it comes to why I always refer women to a women's health physio, and I explain to them what's happened in that, what their women are actually assessing for is exactly that. And often when the benefits of them doing an actual internal is that they can assess what you are doing when you're doing that, when you're either contracting or relaxing. And yeah, most of the time women aren't doing it correctly. But also just knowing that women don't have to have an internal for that. I remember the first time I ever saw a women's health physio, we actually used ultrasound to show my muscles, and I was not doing them correctly.
I love
and
real-time ultrasound.
It's amazing, and it shows you very clearly what muscles you are using or not using. And the same that or an internal, like you're getting that physical feedback to tell you what you're actually, and it's that such a moment of, oh, that's what it feels like when I'm doing the pelvic floor muscles correctly. Like that's what it feels like. Then they know that's how to do it correctly. So yeah, very, I'm
very big fan of real-time ultrasound, especially from an exercise. I know that, you can't check for prolapse. There's a whole host of things that you can't do without doing an internal examination. However, from a exercise perspective, when a woman can visually see on a screen, not just have that physio fingers like inside squeezing, because you get that feedback at that time, but if she can see on a screen what her pelvic floor is doing, it's like a mirror. And then she can take those cues out into an exercise environment and know that when she does this, her pelvic floor comes up, or when she does that, like she's actually bearing down, which is really helpful for us. We've definitely had feedback before where, women come back to us and say, well, I don't know what I'm doing because her fingers are inside me and now I can't feel that. So when we use real-time ultrasound, we get that, she gets that kind of feedback. So we always try and partner with physios that do both. But if we have to choose one or the other, we always go the internal because we know that that's a better overall assessment.
Yeah. And I mean, the benefits as well is it's not just exercise. When women can then have that aha moment, this is what it actually feels like to do my pelvic floor correctly and relax them correctly. They can apply it to all areas of life. So when they're coughing, when they're sneezing, when they're just picking up things, when they're picking up their baby even, we can be doing those pelvic floor exercises and bracing and protecting. Because it's not just, I could go. I mean, I could go down the prolapse, but I've done a whole episode on that, so I probably don't need to. Okay, if I could, so first off, one of the things I didn't mention is you've actually written a book. Congratulations.
I have. It's a few years ago now, but I own that. I have written a book.
Well done. Yeah, well done. And it's called How to Love Your Body as Much as Your Baby.
It is.
I always honor someone that's written a book, an author, by giving a giveaway. So if you're listening to this podcast in real time, jump on over to my Instagram and there'll be some sort of giveaway that'll be for that book. So I think it's always nice to thank you for your time by giving a book giveaway and put you under the pressure of writing a second one now as well.
Yeah, I really should.
Yeah,
I hate that word should. I really could.
You really can, and now I think you will. Okay. One of the questions I was going to ask before is professionals that are that are hearing this podcast and going, okay, I need to become MumSafe accredited. How do they go about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first way to do it would be to get in contact with me. So the best place to do that could be on Instagram. So at Jen Dugard, which is my personal Instagram page. On that page, I always talk to exercise professionals. They can also head to mumsafemovement.com and they can hit on the Become a MumSafe Trainer little tab at the top, and it'll give them some information and there'll be a form they can fill out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And those are the best places to find you then, on those two?
Absolutely. If you're a mum that's got no interest in training mums, the better Instagram for you would be MumSafe Movement on Instagram. Yeah.
All right. And I'll tag all of those below. If I could ask you if there's 3 books that you could recommend in pregnancy,
Oh,
it
in
doesn't actually have to be
pregnancy.
in pregnancy. It can be pregnancy, postpartum, birthing, inspirational. It doesn't actually have to be related to any of those. I have people that recommend just inspirational, life-changing books,
I'm like
success
looking around
books.
my room now. I've got all my books on my shelf.
Yeah. What are 3 books that you love that you'd recommend?
Hmm.
I
You know,
didn't
I'm a
I
go.
didn't give you this information.
No, you didn't. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. She has a book, one of her, it wasn't her first book, but one of
I
her
know
earlier
her.
books called Daring Greatly. And a lot of that changed the way that I parent.
Mm.
So it's a very good from a personal development, professional development. But yeah, that book in terms of understanding better language, your values, everything changes when you become a parent. Like, how does this all fit together? So the work of Brene Brown, and she's got some stuff specifically around parenting and conscious parenting. So I really,
Mm.
really like her work. Um, I'm not gonna go with birthing books. So there's another amazing author called Kemi Nekvapil. I don't know if you've heard of
No,
Kemi.
haven't heard of
She's
this one.
actually just brought out a new book, which is not the one I'm recommending, but her new book is called oh, it's something about success. But the one that I recommend is called Power, which I highly recommend for women, especially if they are it's about self-advocacy. It's about stepping into your own power. And again, maybe it is a great book to read during pregnancy and postpartum because you're in those real life-changing
Mm.
moments as women.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
need to read this book.
yeah, the other one, oh, it's right here. It's called Ground. This one is her newest one called Grounded Success. And I think this one for me is, we have these preconceptions of what success means, especially as women that are, having families, growing babies, parenting, and running businesses. And sometimes we really align our value and our success with what other people or what we've been fed is success. So
Mm.
grounded success it really talks about what is your version of success and allowing you to step into that, which I think is really, really important in motherhood because we don't have all the time that we had beforehand. We can feel incredibly torn. We can feel guilty if we're over here in our business and then guilty if we're with our kids. And then, so defining, if we've created businesses that we might need to take the pedal off while we're in that season of motherhood, well, how awesome is it that we've created a business that we can do that and that we can decide the cadence that we're working at, and then keep laying those beautiful foundations that we might not have built the tall business that we wanted to while we're raising children, but we've laid these really amazing foundations so that when the season of life changes and we have more time available to us, then we build on those beautiful foundational layers, and we stop trying to align ourselves with what other people tell us
Mm.
success means. Maybe that's 3 books now because I heard Kemi's got 2 in there.
That that's fantastic. I love it. I love books. So I feel like I
Yeah,
use this podcast to add to my wish list of books that I want to now
nice.
read. So thank you.
Yeah.
Last question, if you could take yourself back to when you were first pregnant, your first baby, what is one thing that you wish you had have been taught? What is one thing you would teach yourself that you
So
wish you?
funny. Like my babies are big now. Like, how old were you when you had babies, Kate?
Oh, I think, well, Jax is 6 and I'm 41 now. That was my last one. So Tallow was 9, he's 9. So yeah, I was about 31, give or take, for
Yeah.
Tallow and then 34 for Jax.
Yeah. So Marley was born when I was 27. I'm just such a different person. Like, I think
Yeah, would you have listened?
I would have slowed down. Like I said to my husband the other day, I was like, I've never just been a mum. And I hate the word just as much as I hate the word should. However, I've never had a period in my life where I've only concentrated on being a mum
Mm.
because I started my business when Marley was 3 months old. So, I had the first 3 months, yes. But then I was like so driven to create something. And it was almost like at times I was rushing through the periods of motherhood when they were little, trying to do these things. Whereas I look back now and I go, oh, I wonder if I was me now, I would probably have taken a longer time off, because the timelines that I thought that I needed to hit in my 20s or 30s, they mean nothing. But the time that you don't get back with your children means everything. And, you know, even now, like my son's 17 and my daughter's 15, and it's like, okay, I can't go back and change anything, but I can reduce my workload or reduce my travel load and things like that for the next, you know, my son's doing his HSC next year, and my daughter, you know, really enjoys spending time with me. Like, I'm so lucky I've got a 15-year-old that wants to spend time with me. I never get the next few years back again. So I can't change what has been. So the advice back then would probably have been, you know, none of it really matters. Like, of course it matters and we want to build things, but the being with them is what matters. I also know the days are long and the years are short, and I have a whole lot of perspective now that I'm at the other end going, oh my gosh, the real years really are short. Doesn't take away from how hard early motherhood is, or every stage of motherhood, but early motherhood, and how much you need. And I needed that identity back then to not only be a mum. So it's such a dichotomy, isn't it? Or
And look what you achieved. Yeah, I know. I think this is the nature of being a mother, though, isn't it? That you're constantly, you know, had you not have done that, I wonder if you would have wished that you'd have done.
Yep.
Maybe that saved you. I don't know. But I do, yeah, I get it. And, you know, even in this world now, like I've got so many you know, there's that never ending to-do list of like so many things I want to achieve in my business. And I have to remind myself, you know, it's very easy to actually also spend time with your children, but not actually be present because you're concentrating on the million of to-do lists, whether you have a business or not, actually, just in, I've got washing to do, I've got lunches, I've got to prepare for this, this, and this, like, and to not be present. And it's something that I'm constantly coming back to, definitely not always getting it right. And yeah, just having to remind myself, like, there is a massive to-do list of things I want to do. When it's pick up time for the kids, I have to remind myself, like, this is that the work has to stop, because it will never stop.
It never does.
This is the time with your family. And because really, and that is all that matters, but also hard when you're so passionate about what we're passionate about, and you want to make a difference, and you see the flaws in the system, and you're so motivated to make changes. It's, so I don't know. I concur.
I think conscious choice, songs we're making, I don't think I made conscious choices in the way that I do now back then.
I was just been talking about this a lot lately, that I wish I could somehow have this magic ball and apply everything that I know now and do it all again. Like, I wish I could go back, say the person I am.
Would you know it? Would you be the same person now if you did it but different back then? That's
why we can't have time capsules and all of that sort of stuff. And we would just screw with the universe too much, and where we'd be, who knows? But hindsight. Is there anything that you would like to finish on, Jen?
I don't think so. I just want to say thank you for creating such a great space to have. We know we've, you know, gone in lots of different directions. I hope that women listening have taken information about their bodies, but more, you know, it's about being in a space where you choose what's right for you consciously, rather than, whether it comes to your body, your business, like whatever it may be, rather than just going with what you're told. And until we're at a time where we have a lot more education provided to us, we get to ask questions, and we get to self-advocate, and we get to make sure that we have the right education every step of the way. So hopefully someone is feeling a little bit more empowered to ask questions and make choices that are right for her.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much, Jen, for all that you've done, that you've created, and that you're still doing. So thank you for giving up your time to be on today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If this resonated with you, then it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe and share with a friend, so that together we can get this podcast out to the world. And if there are topics you'd like for me to cover, or guests you'd like to see on the show, then please reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram, _pregnancy_collective, or email kate@thepregnancycollective.com.au. I would love to hear from you. Okay, see you next time.